Let's move on to access control. So after we've defined class, then some of its properties and methods, can they be accessed by other classes? If so, are there any restrictions on the permissions? This is the focus of this section. There are 4 levels of permissions: private, default, protected, and public. So there is a difference between their levels. The lowest level, which is the most private, is called private, which essentially means private. And the second, default, means default. In other words, if I have this class, or this property, or this method, I don't add access control. Then it's the other side's by default. The next level is called protected. It's protected. So protected. His access rights. And what is his scope of action? Well, show him through a case study later. The fourth and largest is called public. So let's go to this diagram. Private is a private access right. It's used to modify a class. Methods can also modify internal classes. Default is the default access. Then protected is protected. And public is public access. Okay, so let's look at this diagram. And in this diagram, private and default, public and the protected, the whole range of them. Okay, so here's what's next. Let's go through this IDEA to show you how. We define a student. We take the 4 privileges. These are the 4 permissions. Each of them corresponds to private, default. This is protected. Public is public. Okay, so where's his permission to visit? Let's start by looking at it. If we have these 4 properties in this class, attributes in this class, can we visit them? C, D. It's okay to look at this. If he doesn't see it, it'll just go red. So we can print what it means. That this permission is in this class. These 4 permissions can be all good. So can it be in other classes? The same thing. Let's create another class in this example 9 package. Let's create another class. Let's say I write a test class. Let's move it to the right. In the test, can we access ABCD? To see the same thing. So first we equals to a new student. Right, and then through this to point on. Everyone can send. Find that we cannot access BCD. But I cannot access. Okay, let's output it. Look at A. B and then C. And then this is D. As you can see, now, is this a not accessible? It's private, it can only access it in this class. Add the words private to that. Permissions are restricted to this class. What is the scope of the remaining 3 permissions? Let's take a look. BCD corresponds to protected, default, and this what? And the public ones. So let's see in another package. Then at this time, if I want to access the content of this student, look at this. At this point, we're creating an student. Stu is the same as creating a new student. You can see the stu dot is removed. That is, in other package classes, we can only access this D. In other words, we can't access this ABC. Let's take the ABC section and put it over here. And put the same over here. As you can see, ABC can't be accessed. Then private permissions are not allowed either. And the default one is also not allowed. Then, protected is also not allowed. Is it only who? In other packages? I'm going to summarize this here. In other classes of other packages, only the public modifiable can be accessed. Other classes. Then at this time, we find that the public class is the biggest. What's the difference between protected and default? Protected inside the subclasses of the other packages can be accessed. Let's say we have another one. Let's say Xiaoming. Xiaoming inherits this student program. After inheriting the locked, then this time, to write a default method in here, then the object Xiaoming. I create a Xiaoming object. It's the same as the new Xiaoming. See if he can access C. He can also access D. In other words, for the subclasses of this other package, we have access to the protected. Okay. So let's wrap it up here. Look at the permissions. First, the permission modifiers. There are 4 of them. The first one is private. The second is default. The third one protected. And the fourth one is public. Well, private is private. Its scope is that it can only be accessed within this class. Default is the default. Default is okay. It is also accessible only in this package. Except for this package, protected can be accessed in. Except in this package. In addition to, this package can be used in other packages, can be accessed in subclasses of. Public is an arbitrary package. Any class. We just need to remember which of them more important. One is private. One is public. These two are the two permissions we need to master. Well, another thing to keep in mind. Inside the method, member variables within a method, there are no restrictions on access. That is to say, inside a method, there's no such thing as permissions. So let's say I'm in a main method. I can declare a variable, for example, and then a word, equal to 18. Can he put some permission restrictions on it? Look, he can't. You can't add anything, not even if you public. Why not? Because we can't access variables. We can't access them through an external class. First note: local variables don't have access to this. The second one. So what else can be modified by private? It can also modify the class. So this is called an inner class. That's one of the things we'll learn later on. Okay, so for now, for class. Default. There are two types. For the outer class, the external class has two modifications. One is public, and the other one is default. Okay, internal classes can be private. The rest can modify properties and methods. Except that the modifying attribute has to be a member attribute, and not local properties. That's all we're going to talk about.